Good afternoon. My name is Christopher KERR, Executive Director of the Ignatian Solidarity Network. Welcome to this online conversation on supporting undocumented students in Jesuit higher education. We're grateful to have everyone here with us today, including our panelists. Joining us from Loyola, Chicago is Joe Saucedo, the Director of the Department of Student Diversity and Multicultural Affairs, Kevin Mahaney, the Associate Director of Student Financial Services at Georgetown University. We also have Anna Brown, who is the Chair of the Department of Political Science at St. Peter's University, and Jennifer Ayala, who is the Director of the Center for Undocumented Students at St. Peter's University. We're grateful to have everyone here today to talk about these important issues of supporting undocumented students. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We're going to start just kind of acknowledging the struggles that may exist for your undocumented students, particularly things that maybe you've noticed are unique to post-election, post-inauguration, new semester. So I was hoping you could share, and if in doing that, you could give a brief overview of the population of undocumented students on your campus. In some cases, you may have very specific information, or it may be a little bit broader, but if you can help us understand what that is. Joe, would you be willing to start from Loyola, Chicago?
Yeah, thank you, Chris, also for hosting this and having us here together. In terms of students, just to give you some context with Loyola, we've got students, and this is based on our best guess efforts of who's undocumented, who's out with their status. I can tell you we've got at least an estimated 40 to 50 undergraduate students, and then we've got Arrupe College, and I don't know if the audience members are aware, Loyola Chicago didn't establish the first community college, the first Jesuit community college, Arrupe College, which, by all accounts, I think we have about 60 or so undocumented students, not all of whom have DACA status. Right now, this is some scary times, I think, for a lot of us and our students and their families. And there's so much, I would say, uncertainty. I think what is very alarming is that we at Loyola, at least, have had these students who have been, with open arms welcomed to the institution, right, and who felt very comfortable in disclosing their status when applying for, tuition scholarships and whatnot. And I think it's just a very difficult time right now for them to sort of understand, where's the support, when push comes to shove, is the university going to be there to support? And so I think many of us within the faculty and staff ranks are really doing our part to sort of have all those questions answered as best as we can. But I think what we're seeing with regard to Loyola, what I'm seeing, I should say, in my role within student diversity, is that students are just trying to make it day by day. I think we have a fair amount who commute to campus. So I think it's naming that for them, the risk of riding the CTA, the public transit, from home to get to their classes takes on a whole new meaning, right, in the Trump era. I think also about the anxiety that's at an all-time high level for these students, even more than I would say their counterparts who are simply, just going to college and managing the day-to-day. So I think it's multifaceted, the sort of challenges that they're trying to manage, but also, what is the onus on staff and faculty and what we can do within our, sphere of influence to help mitigate those fears, but also not setting them up with false hope that things are really going to be okay. Because I've heard more and more, and I'm sure our panelists can share that lately, I think that does nothing to alleviate any of the fears that students are carrying with and their families. For us to simply say it's going to be okay, I think that really sort of undermines the gravity of what we're dealing with.
Thanks, Joe. And Kevin, what about at Georgetown? I think Georgetown's in a unique situation, being situated in Washington D.C., so close to the seat of the federal government. So I think that adds an element probably too. Can you talk about the situation there for your students?
Absolutely. And while we don't require students to identify as undocumented students, when they do, we do everything within our purview to help them with not only financial resources but also programmatic resources as well. It was amazing how the end of October versus the beginning of November really kind of was on campus. I mean, we had all this steam moving forward, and there were people were coming out in support, and it was, everything was fantastic, and it was looking up and up, and then bam, the election hit, and the mood on campus just soured. And I think, since we are in DC, it's in our faces whether we want it to be or not. So undocumented or not undocumented, we have to deal with not only the media, but the pressures of being in DC on a daily basis. And it adds an extra layer of pressure to our students. For example, if the Bridge Act, which we're all in support of, that is a bipartisan law up on Capitol Hill, being spearheaded by Senator Durbin, who's also a Georgetown grad. Our undocumented students might feel a little bit more pressure to kind of participate in that, and whereas maybe if a school in Florida or Louisiana, somewhere else not close to Capitol Hill, might not have that added pressure to kind of fight on behalf of all undocumented students. So there is that. The other thing that we've noticed here is the social media backlash per se, and some of the hurtful things that not necessarily other Georgetown students, just public in general, are commenting on and about. And so the added emotional turmoil of that shouldn't be overlooked. And then again, I think as Joe mentioned, we have a lot of mixed status families, right? And so maybe some of our undocumented students have younger siblings who are not undocumented, or who have undocumented parents who are maybe more in danger of deportation than our students here on campus. So a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and we're always looking for ways to help mitigate that and ease those strains so that the students can concentrate on what they're here to do in terms of studying.
Thanks, Kevin. And Jennifer and Anna, what about at St. Peter's? What would you say is the experience for students there right now? And what is if you can give us a little sense of the undocumented student community there?
Okay, so I would say we don't really have like an estimate of how many are undocumented, although I would suspect that there are even more who come from, as Kevin was talking about before, mixed status families. At the moment, there are 10 who are known to me and who make use of the center and so forth. And then kind of informally, we know about, 5 or 10 more. So something like that of those who have disclosed their status, I would say. We're just like another information. We're an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution, so we have like 30% Latino population. And we also have like a Muslim population. We're a majority, a majority students of color at campus. So there's also been kind of like a stress and anxiety amongst the Muslim students, regardless of status. But specifically with undocumented students, I think, since election night, when results were kind of out there, I was getting these texts in the middle of the night, like, oh my God, this is what's happening now. So the anxiety level, I can say, as the other panelists have been talking about, that's what, I had a student this week who was saying to me, I don't know if is it like, can we walk on the sidewalks? Can we get picked up there? Or should I walk through the campus? I feel like I'm at a point that I can't leave, the campus. I have to stay here. Or, I don't want to go out, and it's really stressing me out. There were other students who didn't go to, last semester, didn't go to class for a period of time. Or, they feel, and what we share, or what some of the students have shared with us is that, part of it is, how can I study thinking that my parents might get deported when I get home? Or, should I be here? Should I be doing something else? And so, the anxiety and stress level, and in terms of, what role can the university have? It's like, there's some, I guess there are different perspectives, of course. There are some who are from the more organizer, so we have organizing students and who go out and go to the rallies and protests and this is what we need to do. And then there's others who don't want to even know, meet other students who are undocumented, because that's how fearful they are that won't come to any of the know your rights workshops because they're afraid of being outed in that way. So I've been doing like individual meetings with some of the people. But you were asking about like what are some of the reactions and challenges. It's a range. Would you say anything else?
The only thing I would add is that when we had the second or third Know Your Rights workshop, the tone was very different. It was kind of like what you were saying from Georgetown. You know, before people were very concerned but hopeful that the worst would not happen. And something the lawyers said in the most recent meeting was over and over again, prepare for the worst, prepare for the worst, prepare for the worst. And I think we're starting to see that, and our students know that. And although at St. Peter's, and I'm sure at many institutions, there's been a lot of effort by faculty and deeply concerned administrators, what we're running up against is the limitation of what the institution can and will do. That's the big problem. They are afraid, and I understand why. They're afraid to be sanctuary because, as our president put it, we run the risk of the whole school shutting down. So I think that's what we're running into, kind of some institutional foot dragging in certain areas.
So in light of this, obviously it is a very challenging situation. It's become even more challenging since the inauguration. Can you talk about any ways that you feel you've been able to support students, things that you've been able to do that you feel, especially in this unique time, offer a level of support, maybe practical, maybe emotional? It's likely that this isn't just you, but many in your campus community that are able to do this. Kevin, what about from Georgetown there?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, the emotions and the whole kind of outlook, changed, I guess, after the election. But what didn't change is Georgetown, or our efforts to continue to grow the support system for our undocumented students. So we had a lot of things that we were setting in place before the election, and we continue to work on those things. We were a little bit late to the game in terms of getting a website up and centralizing our resources, but that was done last year, and it was a fantastic accomplishment. I think what we're working towards now is getting someone in place, a full-time or maybe part-time employee, to really, again, centralize all of these resources so that our undocumented students have one place to go, maybe one person to go to, instead of going to this office for that, this office for that, this office for that. The other thing that we're really working on is creating a physical space, right? Which is more challenging than one might think. All the financial help, that's great. I mean, of course, tuition and books need to get paid, and room and board and stuff like that. But I think more importantly, or just as importantly, to focus on like the programmatic side of things. For 12 years now, Georgetown has had something called the Georgetown Scholarship Program, and while it's not specifically for undocumented students, it's for our it's for students from lower economic, socioeconomic backgrounds, and who are first generation students. Undocumented students, at least all the ones that I have met, are a part of GSP, and the programming that is provided, the sense of community that is provided, is just fantastic. And to continue to work on that and to continue to build on that, fundraise for that, I think is very crucial to continue to foster just a welcoming environment to recruit undocumented students, and to continue to have them grow here.
Thanks, Kevin. We had let's see. Sorry, we had someone who noted, Kathleen Brucato, who I think is at University of Notre Dame in South Bend, noted the importance of having multiple people on campus that, oh, I'm sorry, she's at Canisius. Not geographically close to each other, but there's nothing bad about being at University of Notre Dame, but she's at Canisius, which is a great place. The importance of having multiple people on campus that a student can, a student can find support from, but also this idea that having a center and having someone who's able to dedicate time to speaking to the needs. And I would imagine Georgetown finding space for anything is challenging, and there are a lot of good things, I'm sure, that are searching for space. Jennifer and Anna, what about at St. Peter's?
Okay. Yeah, I can talk about some of the things, but as you said, it's really multiple departments. So like we work really closely with campus ministry. There's a diversity office, and obviously social justice with the organizing. So we have a space, and it's the social justice house, and it's kind of what you can talk
We're
about.
in it right now.
We're in it right now. Here we are. And so it's like a welcoming space for students to just come in, and for hospitality. And we have gatherings here where we just like talk about different things. More recently, one of the things that we started instituting, we have a partnership with Alliance Health, and so and they do like outreach work. So we have like someone come in and do kind of like group counseling type stuff, the talking circle is what we call it. Especially that started really this semester because of the high levels of anxiety. We have a counseling center, but this is kind of like in addition to that. And the people who come in are also bilingual, so that's also helpful for the students in terms of the mental health aspect of it. As Anna mentioned before, we offer regular Know Your Rights workshops where an immigration lawyer comes in and pro bono and offers like information. The most recent one, she was kind of like helping us unpack what's in these executive orders. And before that, it was more of like, okay, this is what you can do as a DACA. So the nature of the Know Your Rights workshops has changed. And so part of it has to be more targeted. The next one that we're gonna have will include kind of like role plays. What happens if, because we distribute these Know Your Rights cards, and we have this information about this is what you do if you're approached, all that kind of stuff. But when you're faced with that situation, it's very intimidating. So they're going to do like these like kind of role play scenarios, which might be, I know the last time there was even just a discussion, it was kind of upsetting, but at the same time, there's the information. And before this, we had done like staff training so that they knew, although they have to be now updated, because kind of explaining what's DACA and things of that nature. But there's going to be like a new round of that that has to do with, for example, at the moment we're developing like a protocol, something like more uniform that is based on Dwayne had used as a model the LA school district protocol if ICE were to come to campus, because there were a few fora where President Kornakia met with students, and that was organized by the diversity office, where they kind of like made a case for we need to be a sanctuary campus and so forth. So as a result of that, he sent out a letter without calling this a sanctuary campus, but having some of the elements of limited cooperation with immigration enforcement and all of that. But one of the things that we realized, it's one thing to have it in a letter, which is a good first step, but then how do you implement that? Like what if you come to campus and you go to a student that's walking in there, or you go to a department, how does that? So now we're in the process of developing that kind of protocol. The other thing that we started to institute was kind of like this mentoring system that we started that last year, but kind of like pairing each student with like a faculty or staff member, because one of the things that like with the raids and with the even with the travel, the Muslim travel ban, it's like, what if one of our students are caught up in that? How will we know? So that's something that we've been thinking about, so like a text alert system or some kind of like, so for now, we're developing a plan for if these things were to take place, what are our actions? And at least we can have like one person who will kind of follow up with the students on a regular basis to kind of check in and, are you okay? Where are you with things? I think that's basically it. I'm trying to think of what else. And then of course, like we, as a result of this, or in collaboration with other clubs on campus, there's another student organization, and what they do are like the vigils, the rallies, and the organizing work that's kind of related to, but not like the work of the center, but just because the center has had, like with the trainings and so forth, it was when we did the faculty trainings, it was not just me or not just but like a student leader, undocumented student leader. So we had like student interns, DACA interns. We had, for students that had DACA, also work study. So we're going to see what happens now when the work study gets taken away. But the other mechanism was through internships. There's also like a modest dreamer fund that we have for students who are, well, actually this year kind of expanded. It was just for juniors and seniors before. And so I think that's it, because part of it was how to compensate students for the work that they're doing. And some of it was direct, some of it not direct. And a lot of the scholarships here, they're not tied to, I want to have more conversation later about the financial aid stuff. They don't have, it's not tied to, a lot of the internal scholarships not tied to immigration status. So, you know, there are students here that have been undocumented and gotten a free rider based on some of these internal merit scholarships. So, and you can be, and live on campus because, you know, as an RA, you can, you know, in exchange for some work that you do there, then you get housing. So there are these alternate ways of kind of compensating and working with students. I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention.
But just briefly, I was working with Jen. We're trying to establish what we're calling the HEAT squad. So, you know, heat to melt the ice, but the acronym would be helping everyone act together. And that squad would be kind of the advocacy activist group. So we were just talking about, we may have a situation where someone's family may be rounded up. And so would the HEAT squad accompany that family to a hearing or to the detention center? So yes, we've already put up, and I'd highly recommend the Center for Constitutional Rights Immigration Defense Project. They have an excellent ICE raid toolkit. They also have some excellent posters that we have hung up all over campus and in our house about what to do if there is an ICE raid on campus. I think everyone saw with the arrest and deportation of Guadalupe in Arizona that folks were out there putting their bodies in front of the van and to the van. And I'm going to see, I haven't, of course, said to this to our president, but I have a history of civil disobedience. I know other faculty members do. And I don't have a problem doing something like that. But I really think we need people to, it's come to the point where the way that I look at it is that they are kidnapping our students, and I'm just not going to let that happen. And so I think that especially those of us who are very privileged by race and class and position need to literally put our bodies on the line at this moment. And so the HEAT squad would also do the vigils. I think also demystifying the language. You know, for a board of trustees, for example, from what I understand, they're not all on board with, you know, so-called illegal immigration. So the faculty needs to come in and start writing and start, you know, using, like Aviva Chomsky's work is excellent in helping us better understand language and how it's used and why we need to support. And I'll just say one more thing. The CCR discussion of ICE raids talks about an entire infrastructure of deportation. And so our Jesuit schools really need to come to terms with the ways in which, you know, our criminal justice programs are perhaps not critical enough of the institutions that they work for, and how we, you know, unintentionally or not, help to set up a deportation infrastructure, a racialized, aggressive policing, a militarized country. I mean, the Jesuit schools, it's like now or never. Now is the moment to be a people of nonviolence and, you know, a strong community for the undocumented, and not to kind of stand on the sidelines. So that's the work of HEAT.
And what's the acronym again, Anna?
HEAT, H-E-A-T, so to melt the ice of immigration and custom enforcement, and it's helping everyone act together, H-E-A-T, yeah. And
the toolkit is,
No, that is the Center for Constitutional Rights, the Immigration Defense Project. It's an incredible resource. It's 212 pages, and that's just the ICE raid defense kit. And they have done some excellent scholarship. And that's where I'm getting my sense of, you know, have we in our departments, like at St. Peter's, our criminal justice department is the largest department in the school because there are a lot of jobs. And I brought up this example the other day with Georgetown. So Georgetown, looks back in time and says, geez, we shouldn't have sold the slaves to keep our institution open. Okay, that's fine, that looking backwards, but it's a little easy to do that now, 200 years or however many years it was since then. What about right now? Are we willing to say, sorry, you're going to have to be taken away because we need to stay open? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same very difficult question at this moment.
Thanks, Anna. You're right. It creates a lot of challenges in terms of how an institution can respond to this. Let's go to Loyola Chicago. Joe, can you give us a sense of some of the things that are you would say are successes in terms of supporting students?
I would say similarly to what we just heard from St. Peter's, I thank you for sharing that, and I'm eager to follow up after this call with regard to HEAT and some of the other initiatives. I will say it's been nice that there's been such a collective effort across the university. So, and not even just with the undergrad population, but I would even look at our law school and other partners of the institution coming together. I think looking at hosting more on a regular basis, know your rights workshops, contacting and inviting to our campuses, local agencies, providing legal aid, for example, pro bono. Those are ongoing sort of efforts that are being undertaken here. I think right now too, it's leaning on our colleagues throughout Chicago. So we've got a lot of schools from DePaul to public institutions like Northeastern Illinois, where who some of them are HSI institutions, right, to Hispanic serving. And so figuring out ways that we can all share resources that are critical to keeping these communities, our families and students safe. But then also coming up with contingency plans. I think I'm hearing that more and more in the last couple of days with faculty who are pretty riled up as well, to sit with students to understand sort of what is their plan should, we have law enforcement make their way onto campus. Yeah. I think there hasn't been a protocol, but that is something, and I heard Jennifer talked about that, that is something that we're looking at currently at Loyola of, being transparent with what is our protocol, so that all members of the staff and faculty understand what to do in the moment and that we're trained, right, in how to effectively support or intervene. I think what's been helpful to hear from students in their experience, right, and managing the expectations on as being a student. I know some who are really struggling to A, go to class, but also B, to request maybe extensions on papers, assignments, and things like that. But there's this internal struggle of, do they out themselves to the professor, or do they also feel like, do they have to shield themselves from all of that and just, withstand and make it work? And so I think me and my team and colleagues were really trying to sit with them, offer some guidance, advising, but also intervene. I think a lot of us who have relationships with professors here, and we have quite a few at Loyola who are very staunch supporters, willing to, be there to protect those students. And I think we're sitting with them to try to coach them on how it is that they can, ask for help or to lean on our allies, because now is the time where we have to do that, right?
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. And I know in Chicago the other day, there was a lot of kind of rumors and news circulating about potentially the presence of immigration officials on the subway or the L system. And so I know that, even if it's not true, it creates a lot of anxiety for people when there's a sense of fear like that. So, and I think what I heard from all of you is that, we have a new reality. This new political landscape creates a new reality, and it requires a lot of recalibrating in terms of, and putting some plans into action. I know all of your institutions did a lot of work in the fall to prepare for this, but it seems that it still takes some kind of coordination to put those sorts of preparations into action. So. I want to go to a few questions that were shared from people who are attending today. I think some of these questions are they're challenging because they involve a lot of internal conversation and discernment in institutions. So it's possible that you may not be able to respond or can only offer brief thoughts or reactions. So one of the questions is about the idea of sanctuary. And I think, Anna, you didn't say it, but I think a little bit of where you were going. Have members of your campus community had conversations about the idea of sanctuary? Is there anything that you'd like to share? Is there anything that anyone would like to share about the topic of sanctuary?
Well, there was a good op-ed piece in the New York Times. I think it was just a day or two ago, saying a lot of what schools are already doing, like having the protocols or not releasing the information, keeping everything private, is essentially what you're already doing anyway. Like through FERPA, you're not supposed to be giving out information essentially, basically to anybody. And even sanctuary cities, they have a voluntary relationship with ICE. If ICE comes in, they can't really stop them. There's nothing they can do. So the author was saying, I mean, sanctuary is not really a safe space for people. That's kind of the theme of false hope. Like it's not really going to protect anyone unless people take, other measures. And so one of the things that we have been talking about at St. Peter's is, well, maybe we should just do it. Since sanctuary calls attention, maybe unwanted attention anyway, let's just do the work and call it something else, like a welcoming community or something, of that nature. But let's also, either we're going to go there and really, are we going to set up an underground railroad system and provide safe spaces for students, maybe like with faculty or something? Because unless the university is willing to say, okay, we're going to literally prevent you from taking the student, we're not really offering sanctuary. We're just doing what we always do in terms of protection of student information and reaching the needs of this particular student who's undocumented in the ways that many people have expressed already, which is what we would do for, I think, any population that would come to us, and let's say a disabled community. Certainly we would be attending to them in specific ways. So we need to talk about, right, what is it that at this moment institutions are saying we can realistically offer? What do the people want? Because Jen and I are convinced this is going to have to come from a people up movement, and maybe we need to work with local parishes and communities in the parish and do the work of real, like, sanctuary a la Underground Railroad in that system, rather than say, okay, our Jesuit schools are going to literally not let ICE come and take these people away. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think while the conversation of to be or not to be a sanctuary campus goes on, I think that schools' legal counsels can get involved in it's been mentioned earlier, to create protocols for different offices if you are approached by federal agents, whether from ICE or FBI or wherever, on what the offices, what your rights are and what you do and you do not have to do. If they can create something saying, somebody comes in, you don't have to give them an answer right away. You can refer them to legal counsel and make them go through that, make them get it in writing, make them identify themselves. And you're absolutely right, Anna. The FERPA laws are pretty explicit in what information is protected.
Thanks, Kevin. Another question we had was supporting folks on your campuses or in your campus community other than students, and anything, conversations you had about that, whether it's faculty, staff, contract employees. It was brought up earlier, students with, mixed family status or mixed status family members. Have you had any conversations or about that on your campus?
I can offer. So at Loyola, I think this kind of goes beyond even exclusively undocumented, but we have contingent of students who have been mobilizing on campus since last year, Students for Workers' Justice. And so I think as a result of a lot of activism on this camp at this university, we've had some students initiate talks with our president to sort of establish some working groups. And one of those is going to be specifically looking at ways to ensure that the rights of our immigrant staff members, employees are actually being investigated, and that we're doing more to protect them and safeguard those interests of those employees. And so that's one, but I haven't, at least in our office, have sort of heard that come up as much. I think we're sort of more focused on the student experience.
Sure.
I would agree. I mean, because we were thinking about this after the meeting. We had a conversation. Well, what about, because we have like, staff who would also benefit from like protections and the type of discussion, the depth of discussion that we offer the students right now. I guess the students isn't, but you're right, and that's something that we haven't done as much.
Right. And part of that is because I think we're just short-staffed. Like it's you're realizing that there's so much need, and there's only 24 hours in the day. So one of the things that I'm finding that's been really helpful and really wonderful is connecting with the local Jersey City community. So there's a great group called Jersey City Vigil for Refugees, and they do a vigil every Thursday night for refugees, but they also run a tutoring program that many of us are involved in for Syrian refugees. We're having a Syrian supper club in the Social Justice House to get community and refugees together, and a Syrian embroidery project to sell the goods. And so I'm going to ask tonight, we really need help in this work, and I think it's actually a wonderful way of bringing together town and gown, as they say, to root the community, the university in the community, and vice versa. And so maybe it's something that could actually be a door to a whole different relationship between university and the community, one that's so much tighter. And that's tonight. We have a big panel on immigration, and a lot of the community will be there, and I'm going to present these ideas of we really need to work together because we can't do it by ourselves right now.
Yeah, and we work with some community organizations, so Migrante and and they and they've like hosted events here, and we've co-sponsored like the Migrante held a legal clinic. So they had a number of lawyers that our students saw. So it was like a community and university student partnership. So that was something that, and one of the things that we're talking about doing is having like a community forum. Sometime in April, where we invite different like organizations within the local area to just kind of talk about what are the ways that we can collaborate on this. One of the discussions we were having is like the issue of like the rumors of raids. And what do you share? Do you not share? Do you share if it's a rumor and then cause panic, or then do you wait till you confirm? But then how does that confirm? It gets confirmed when someone actually gets detained or so. So there's that debate, and what might be a community level response to that. So that's, yeah.
And I also want to say too, I was, maybe a little tough on the sanctuary city because, and university, only because of the false hope, but Jersey City is a sanctuary city, and I don't want to downplay. I was at the city council meeting when they, again, repeated this resolution, and it was really beautiful. I mean, you heard it was packed. And there was no ban, no wall, sanctuary for all was echoing through the city council chambers. And it was quite amazing. It was just, so I don't mean to downplay that moment. We need to celebrate that way and really share those few moments of light these days.
Kevin, I want to follow up on, someone had a question related, I think it was you had brought up FERPA. And someone asked a question, they said, is there such thing as a FERPA block that prevents the release of directory information that a student can request? I don't know.
FERPA has there's four things that FERPA really does. I'm reading it off this PowerPoint over here, so excuse my head. It's the right to see education records that the institution maintains on the student's right to see that. The student's right to seek amendment to those records that the student believes is inaccurate, misleading, and in certain cases append a statement of the record. The right to consent to disclosure of his or her records, and that one's important because without the student consent, the written consent of the student, we don't have to give information. Universities don't have to give information to outside entities, whether they're looking for loan information or who's in school and who's not. The only place that it doesn't kind of cover is student employment, right? And they can go to student employment and see who's employed. But even then, the student employment office should have something in place where it's going to take them 3 to 5 days so they can run it by legal and let folks know who's asking and what they're asking for. And the fourth is the right for the student to see a file or if there's and make a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education concerning alleged failures by an educational institution. So those are the 4 main kind of FERPA regulations that FERPA kind of covers, so to speak.
Great, thank you. This is another question. We might come back to you, Kevin. And I'm not sure, I want to be careful how I ask this. The question was, are there creative ways of financially supporting undocumented students? And so I don't want to suggest funny business necessarily, but can you speak to that? I think it's met with good intent, Kevin. So.
Sure, yeah, and it all goes back to a university's level of funding. I mean, if you're lucky to work at a university with a larger endowment or an advanced fundraising mechanism, sure, you're going to be able to afford to financially support undocumented students, more than if you're maybe at a school that doesn't have those things in place. Georgetown University itself is a need-blind admissions, meet full need financial aid. And what I mean by meet full need is, we take a student, whether they're undocumented or not undocumented, we take their financial aid application, come up with what we call an expected family responsibility or expected family contribution, and we meet the rest of their need with scholarships. So if you're at a university that can afford to, maybe cover some of the federal aid that undocumented students do not have access to, that's great, right? A lot of universities will not only set their students up with their institutional money, whether it be need-based or merit-based, but they'll also use the federal financial aid dollars that are in place, and of course, undocumented students don't have access to that. So if you can cover what would have been there with the federal aid, that's one way of kind of doing things. I heard St. Peter's talking about being an RA as well, here, I think you have to be eligible for DACA. You might be eligible. Might have to be eligible for DACA to have that. But those are some of the things that we're doing here on our campus.
Sure. Joe, I know at Loyola Chicago, students initiated kind of a creative way to create at least some support for undocumented students. Can you speak to that?
Sure, yeah, and we are currently, a couple of years ago, we had students coming together. This was the leadership of our student government at the time, and then we had our Latin American student organization join forces to lobby their peers essentially to tax themselves $2.50 each semester. That was funneled through their student activity fee. And what would happen effectively, they would be raising money to support a scholarship that would go to directly serve the needs of our undocumented students. And so that scholarship is now called the Maja Scholars Scholarship Fund, and we've received outside donors that have matched donations as well, which is great. And we're very happy about the fact that we're going to continue, that Loyola is not going to be veering away from that commitment to the scholarship fund. So it's institutionalized. The Board of Trustees voted to support it last year. And we're now working with undergrad admissions in our Transfer Adult Center as they start to recruit next year's group of new students. We've set aside 5 full tuition scholarships that include housing as well, on-campus housing for 5 students, 3 first year and then 2 transfer students. But currently there has been a stipulation that students who are eligible for the scholarship must also have DACA status. But, as we think about what the future of DACA should be, all signs here at least have pointed to that if DACA were repealed, the scholarship would still carry. And we're not going to not continue to fund those students who are now, second year, third year students at Loyola.
And thanks, Joe. And Anna and Jennifer, your St. Peter's in a little different situation than Georgetown in terms of being very tuition driven. And Could you talk about, any ways that, are there any ways that undocumented students can find financial support or access to resources financially there?
Well, basically what we had mentioned before, there's they're eligible regardless of immigration status of any of the internal scholarships that St. Peter's offers. There's also like a smaller Dreamer fund that goes, doesn't matter, DACA or undocumented, or TPS actually is another category of students that's eligible for. So those are the main ones that and then of course we have like scholarship sessions where there are like resources out there, websites and so forth, that where I don't know how that's going to change now, but like private different kinds of scholarships that are out there that are for undocumented students, and others that say, it doesn't matter that non-citizens can apply as long as it doesn't say something about citizenship. Then so there's like the Undocu blog or something like that. I forgot. I have to look at the website, but it's a helpful website that like kind of has been sharing, or at least through last year, and the different scholarships, like outside scholarships that students can apply to. But that's essentially, I mentioned the RA and the work study for those who have DACA, of course, and then internships. That's another like kind of creative way, not that they can get like financially compensated for that, but it could count as like a part of a course or something like that, to do some of this work. I'm trying to think of what other. That's about it.
Struggling financially at St. Peter's. It's hard. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for us is finances.
For everyone, I think, is how they're gonna.
Thank you. So it's about 9 till the hour. We have time for one more question. The question is, and it's in a way, I mean, you all are kind of past this question, but maybe you can offer some insight in hindsight. The person asked, they said, our university is smaller and we don't have a great sense of who our undocumented students are, how many there are. Do you have any advice for a school that's trying to start to be more intentional about supporting undocumented students? What are first steps? What are ways that they can begin to be more intentional, more focused, and maybe aspire to get to the place that each of your campuses is doing a lot of work on that front?
Can I offer, or I'm thinking about visibility, and I had some students who were not even from Loyola, but we had invited to help with developing our ally training recently. And I think for them, they were taken by just simply seeing posters in our, we're located in the student union here at Loyola. And so to see posters that name that we're a resource for undocumented students, or that we're a resource and welcoming safe space for LGBTQ plus students, right? I think not waiting for people to disclose those aspects of their identity, but just be forthcoming with it and say, we see you, we're here for you, but here's some resources. I think that can go a long way to invite people in, or at least let them know that you're an institution that's thinking about them.
Yeah, I agree. I think oftentimes students go to or feel like comfortable disclosing their status when something comes up with someone that they know and trust, right? Sometimes maybe it's in the classroom, from the faculty perspective to, kind of make the classroom welcoming and kind of mention that specifically. Having the visuals, I think, is important. After like some of the trainings that we had, with United We Dream have these nice, like, I'm unafraid educator with informed documented students. So they would have these posters, and we asked them to like put it in their offices. So in my education office, I have one. And so just like that, as you said, just to kind of elaborate on that, having some kind of like visual presence, so that, students know, okay, I can trust this person, because you don't know what your professor or what the staff member might think, especially now. You may be thinking, is this person like, supportive of Trump and thinks I should not be in this country? So can I feel comfortable talking to them? So you can kind of take some of the guesswork out of that by doing that. And sometimes at events so if you have a panel about, let's say, immigration or whatever topic it is, there could be someone that makes announcements. There's some, information. You can email this person, or just those types of ways, I guess. Those are, I don't know if you have any other suggestions in terms of that.
Just that in my classes after the election, we just kind of gathered round with some donuts and just started talking. And I was telling Jen that it was then that I realized